really raining outside right now, and I'm trying to get some exercise, so I'm doing some pace walking. It's a lot like paced tempo training, if you're familiar with that.
Old school pace tempo training. I'll uh, I'll walk. I'll get my heart rate up, and then eventually start working in some circuits on the. We got some 55-pound dumbbells over there. Got 30-pound dumbbells. Got 20-pound dumbbells. And so, what I do is I just work that into a walk and sip tea. It's raining, so we're doing pace training, walking inside right now, and uploading some 12 minutes over 41 minutes. I'm trying to see how the GoPro footage turned out. I'm really excited about how the GoPro footage turned out. Even though it has 360 degrees of visible, I think when it's uploaded on YouTube, it just shows the main screen, I'm hoping. But it's canceled out on me a couple of times, but I'm trying to get some really good footage in here. It's really rainy right now and cold, so I'm trying to sip on tea and not get try not to get the oven and the heater fired up. But I wanted to talk about this whole thing with Venezuela, Maduro, and the things that are going on internationally here because it's really disconcerting when we look at the power play with Greenland. I mean, what's next? New Zealand? Australia? I mean, where does the line get drawn here, right? As far as this international criminal stepping into other people's, Maduro, he took office illegally, right? Tons of drugs were run through that country, along with all of South America, right? But to abduct someone is a whole different story. So right now I'm trying to do some pace walking. It's raining outside. It's really cold around here right now. And that is an epic event that just happened. And I think a lot of people also, earlier last year, right, when Trump was pushing his Trump coin and actually rug pulled billions of dollars along with the Melania coin, and then the kids started jumping in on this, Hey there, can I do dips on your, what do you mean? Shoulder, sir. Oh, on my shoulder. Yeah, man. I need to get in here and start working out again. I need to get in the other room and do dips, huh? Should I turn that thing back on and start doing? I don't know. It seemed like nobody really liked the fitness live streams that I was doing. So I don't know. If you wanted me to start that back up, I definitely would. I think that's a part of practicing one's principles. That's why I hate to say it, and I know that I annoy people with this, just making some tea. And it's raining outside right now. So what I do is I do like pace tempo walking, and then I try to mix in. We got some 55-pound dumbbells here, 30s and then 20s. So that's enough to like work in a circuit. So I got to get back on that. Admittedly, I haven't been doing that, but if you want to see more of that, I will definitely work that in. I still have several like certifications in training, but I mean, you're only as good as what you use, right? Like I could give people advice on that, but I can't take the advice myself. That's the sad fact of it is. I mean, I would be completely uninterested in politics right now, personally. But I'm suddenly like on into this, right? And I think even kids are beginning to look at this type of thing. And it's just really bizarre that we live in a culture where little children are starting to talk about and have this ideation for politics. Is that good or bad? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think that kids should be aware of this and educated in the artifice of war, right? I mean, it's almost like when you're a parent these days, and my kids are fully grown. I mean, I've got a 34-year-old and one that's about to turn 30. And I've really tried to school them on kind of not going to say be selfish, but focus in on yourself, because that's not something that I ever had. So we're always trying to make up for these deficits. But these days, everyone has to prepare their children for tactical, polemic conversation that's very combative, that challenges belief systems. And we're all susceptible to complete and total collapse down from our very infrastructure of the core principles of what we're all about. So that's why I talk about principles so much, That's why it's so important. I'm going to be doing some training now. I do have a 360 cam, and I'm probably going to start trying to set that up. But I live with my son, and he's really always like, that's his space, and then my space is in the other room, right? So I probably have to take everything in there if I'm going to do 360 cam, because I don't want, he gets pissed off if I, rightly so, if I show the place. I mean, so anyway, sipping on tea, eating carnivore. Ooh, that's still hot. And I'm like Peter Jackson. I'll drink like 50 cups of tea in one day with heavy cream. And it's just like, it keeps me thinking. It's better than coffee that leaches copper out of your system. And I think really is what's behind a lot of the premature graying with people. Not that I'm premature, I'm 56 years old, but I noticed that a lot of youngsters are turning gray in their 20s. And that used to be an anomaly. But that leads into areas like coagulation with the blood and all sorts of other areas, healing. And I always try to proselytize taking in as much beef liver as you can get away with, where you're boosting up your iron, your copper levels, and your vitamin A. In fact, I've got a few pounds of beef liver that I need to cook up over this coming month, so I highly recommend it. And what's going on? Anybody have opinions on Venezuela? No opinions are taken as a threat to me or an ideology. I always like to open myself up for other people's opinions on what they feel is going on. I mean, I can see how one would feel strongly, especially if you're from Venezuela. I've known many people, I've had many clients from South America, and it was interesting to hear their take, being raised in these areas, and especially being raised under like fascist type of systems, right? Where people are getting taken advantage of and someone is always being trampled on. And so it's nice to see that happen, but then the irony is who's actually going about doing this, right? You could say that some sort of incendiary mechanism from an entropy perspective has to ignite a change, right? But does it always have to be done through the artifice of something so diabolical, so evil like the Trump administration is, right? And how non-participatory most people are. Like, in other words, there's like a revolving door where most of the people that are in his administration are so short-lived, right? The FBI is a perfect example. So it's raining here. I'm trying to get a nice walk inside. I'm going to do this pace tempo type training. I try to get in enough of a walk, get my heart rate up, maybe go 2 or 3 miles over about an hour. And then I'll start in on doing, I got the 55-pound dumbbells, 30-pound dumbbells, and 20-pound dumbbells. So I'll do if I want to work in drop sets, if I want to do pre-fatigue, typically I'll start in with like some stiff leg deadlifts. And then I might work in some farmer's carries where I actually will add these totes on and try to at least use like 85 or 90 pounds on each side. So maybe like 180 pounds where I'm just walking and across the room and trying to work in some farmer's carries to get more anaerobic activity, kick up the peak. So it's a little bit like the HIIT training, right? When you're trying to get up over, when you talk about heart rate reserve, you're trying to get up over, say, 165, total heart rate. and go into excess post-oxygen consumption. And that's really what kicks off the recovery rate. And then trying to be more systemic. I'm getting back into doing pull-ups, bar dips, all that stuff. But I do have a TRX. And so I've got several videos where I was just doing TRX training. But there's enough people on YouTube doing that stuff. Hey, how's it going? Melbia Hernandez, what's going on? How's your Sunday? Hope you're doing well. And Joanne, how you doing? Yeah, so I hope you're doing well today. We try to focus on this channel on principles first. It's really easy to get caught up into ideations. The reason I'm trying to keep from turning on the heater, getting a nice warm up, doing some pace tempo training, working in some resistance training, and trying to do more body weight type training at the same time. Really trying to get back on keto. Like I'm able to get through about 18 to 19 hours on keto, and then I just blow it. And so slowly in the past, I was able to work toward ketosis. The thoughts on hoodie? Oh yeah, yeah. Now I'm wearing a hood, huh? So now that you cat me in an impromptu moment, wearing my hood, nothing like our little friend Kevin, right? Yeah, I had to back away from that whole thing because I'm a firm believer in you could say karma, in a sort of ontological form of justice. But my thoughts are that I don't like him. In fact, I dislike him so much that an H could be implemented in there. I'm not going to say the word. I don't want to produce anything negative out of that, but I've been watching him. I've been keeping up on him. I'm surprised that he has any subscribers at all. It's bizarre to me. And I really loved the community over there on 1013, but I had to back out. It was just, I could see how I could see how I was getting in the direct way of him going through his own karma. And I feel like what do you think? I feel like I'm watching him come down. Like I felt like I'm backing away, especially when that psycho James Simmons started to get involved, and then he was trying to grift off of me. And then I saw JJ, Real Talk with JJ, who I like. I saw how that was negatively affecting his channel, and I thought, you're accusing me of trying to boost up subscribers. Number one, I got twice as many subscribers over here. I talk about principles, right? I talk about things that really matter. We're talking about politics over here. I'd like more people to get involved because I really loved the voice of and by the people over on the other channel. So I'd like to be able to implement that over here. But yeah, I mean, this will probably be the only one. If I'm talking about him, I might as well talk about him. I think he's a complete and total con. You all saw it coming. I'm assuming that other people from 1013 migrated over here. You all saw it coming. You saw what Kevin was really all about. And you knew that something was going to come that would give him the excuse to say, yes, I'm healed, I'm healed. It's a miracle, and so many people said that was coming. But again, I try to focus in on the principles, especially on this channel, trying to get away from any of that really negative talk. But, I've been following, if you've been looking at my posts, I've been looking at Damien Eccles, been following Corey Feldman for many years, like looking at what he's doing, following a lot of these people who are just grifters and trolls and taking advantage of people. And I mean, we're talking about little kids being murdered, so you got to admit that pretty much eclipses anything Kevin could or would ever do. Right. I mean, but he's causing a lot of damage. I mean, did you see? So let me ask you a question. Did you see his recent, hospital visit, his most recent little drama situation where he blew that out of control, and it turned out Bridget's wrist wasn't hurt at all, right? And it's like, we know what's coming. We can see it a million miles away before it comes. But what did you think about the fact that he wasn't even there to get up for Bridget because he was asleep like some lazy fucking pig, right? And I can say that. This is my channel, right? So I'm going to say it. And use the excuse that because of my C word, I was asleep in the other room, right? What did you think about that? Isn't that diabolical? Like, he's in the other room and making her run out in the snow and receive the gas truck. What kind of, like, why would she even need a husband? And then she's in compliant, like, yes, you know, because he's got an income coming in and he's working something. That's why I see her as completely complicit in this thing as well, right? And it got so dark to the point where my rants would have gotten so dark that the first video I did, it would have been pulled off. Like, I'm not really in a place where I really want to hold my words at this point. Everything that's going on internationally and all the shit that's being done, the atrocities that are being done around the world. I'm not even, you know, I go on a little bit about Trump, but I think Trump is just a face to the whole globalistic cabal. And so who do we have to really look at for the dissolution and the degradation of we as a people being able to converse and have an open dialogue and an open relationship with one another? Like, that's where our learning is being stunted on the very level, the ground of who we are fundamentally with our principles, you know? He seems like he's spiraling out. He seems like a terrible human being. I really can't stand watching him. I can see right through him. I can see everything that he's saying and the reason he's saying it, and having such an extensive history like you all, looking back at all his prior videos and seeing the grift. It's the same old MO that comes over and over again. And I wonder how, I mean, he is losing a lot of, he's not only losing subscribers, but he's losing a lot of views. But then sometimes it seems like self-sabotage, as if he's doing it on purpose. And then I begin to wonder, I'm like, how sick are these people that are watching this? They know better. I mean, are these people are, it's scary to think that these people are out in society running businesses, driving cars. I mean, that's pretty scary to think about the minds or the lack thereof of the people who are out there on a day-to-day basis interacting with you and I without us even really knowing it, you know? Yeah, he's a terrible person. So, you know, and I started looking at other people, and I realized that many people were starting to get involved and show an interest and start to do, you know, leave their take or do videos on this. And so I pulled off of that because it was too negative. And honestly, I realized that I was sitting in place of the guy's karma, that he needed to pay the price between him, you could say him and God, for lack of a better, or him and the ontology, that there had to be no other delineations, no other distractions from the conduit, the pure energy between him and whatever he thinks of as his creator. And he services money, you know, and he will sell out on any level to get that almighty buck, you know. I have zero respect, and I actually have hatred toward that person. And I don't know why I even, like, I take off all traces of his channel, but I find myself every few days migrating back over, just like the news. Like, we're pretty much taught to focus on some really negative aspect because we want to see what's coming. We want to see how people's minds are working. We want to see a change in the tempo or the registry of how this morality, this sort of master morality works, because we see minute changes that alarm us. And when we see people like this, like Damien Eccles, have you guys checked that out, that I posted up, that he actually has a channel of his own, Damien Eccles of the Memphis 3? Have you checked that out? That's alarming to me, that somebody like that would have written 3 books, have 10,000 subs more than Kevin over at Eek Acres. He was tried and convicted of murdering a little child, drinking, I'm going to be explicit here. This is just the facts. Drinking blood from the little child's genitals and eating his testicles. Yeah, that's true. And now, after 18 years, next month, the new DNA technology, that information is coming out next month. And did you see how Scott Peterson, who was with Lacey Peterson, I mean, I live around that whole area. I remember when all that happened, right? And what makes me most sick is Johnny Depp's involvement with this, that leads back around to Marilyn Manson, leads over to John Frusciante, leads to the Viper Room. It's like, then I don't minimize what Kevin's doing at all. In fact, this expounds upon that, because what he's done is he's seeing that all these people like Damien Echols, he may not be familiar specifically with Damien Echols, but this is like Any Given Sunday, the Al Pacino speech that comes down to the inches, right? When we lose an inch as far as the virtues, the ethics, the moralities, when we lose that inch, it's so hard to gain an inch as it is. So many people have to suffer and die just to up the level of principles in society. But people like him, he sells it all for a buck. He posits himself as if he's this good, upstanding American citizen. You know, he's so proud, and he sticks his chest out with his little 150-pound body. I mean, I disrespect Kevin on every level as a human being, and I know that he's disrespected by his family and in his community. I've heard it from some of the people that I really miss, all of you, about Ryan Garcia, right? The way he used to post about that. And it just got too much information in my head where Kevin's just not that important, right? But he's important in the ways that I'm discussing, where he's the face of what happens when this moral degradation reaches an epic level, and you see Damien Echols selling books, right? Selling magic books, teaching magic. And the only reason that he's known is because they murdered 3 children, 3 little boys. What the fuck is going on here? Right? And then I've always been aware of this because I was watching the whole thing with Corey Feldman. And this links all the way back around, because there's connections with all these people. When you get into Harvey Weinstein, you get into these really convoluted directors who are spreading this sort of malfeasant, dark entity around between these actors. And then you can see the conduit. If you looked at that more recent interview with Corey Feldman, it was actually Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins that interviewed him. I found that very compelling. I saw the two of them, and I'm like, what the fuck? I love Smashing Pumpkins, or the Smashing Pumpkins, right? Having worked and lived around the Bay Area for most of my life, right? And so the questions that he was asking were very pressing, and he really wasn't trying to be too much of an apologetic as far as, but what we're talking about is we're talking about people who lie with the same ease as Kevin, right? I see the con because I see the degradation. I see the gray skin color. I see the false confidence, the bravado, and I see the contradictions. And I've always wondered, I'm like, is Kevin capable of doing what these people have, right? And with Corey Feldman, he literally set up Corey Haim way back in the day. And there's videos with people talking about this where he even had admitted to such, where he made it so that Corey, so this gets into like the whole Diddy thing, Justin Bieber, right? Where he actually set it up to where Corey Haim was raped by someone, and Corey Feldman was 100% behind it and aware of it. And now he tried to flip the script. And then you look at Charlie Sheen and you look at the connections there. And people like Gary Busey, it's just this one big. Have you seen Mickey Rourke, right? You see these people and they're following this, you could say it's this Hollywood cult, right? because we've talked about that whole deal. Sorry, I'm walking and the blood's kind of starting to go down below on my legs. But Dave McGowan, right? We've talked about Dave McGowan to length. Yeah, and he's spiraling. He should spiral, but how long does it take, right? You watch the whole thing and you go, how long does it take for somebody to really fall apart and hit the skids? And it's like, it doesn't ever happen. I've got family members and people that are within throwing stone distance to me that are exactly like Kevin, exactly like Damien Eccles. And Damien's not even his real name, right? Exactly like Corey Feldman, exactly like Charlie Sheen. You can see it on these people's faces when they're coming apart. They look gray. They look like they have jaundice, like in their eyes. Their eyes start to, right? Because they're living with something that human beings weren't supposed to live with or can't live with, right? They're living with a moral degradation that people just aren't supposed to. We're complex beings, but we're making it far more complex than we should. Just existing, breathing. And many people just can't seem to function. I've been having a really great time with my kids around the holidays. Also, we've been getting out. If you saw, we're like flying the drone around. That drone actually goes manual, going out on the beach, using that GoPro. My younger son bought my older son a GoPro video camera. And so we're getting like a lot of 360 images and things like this. So it's really, and playing video games and stuff like that. So it's just been, enjoying the family as much as possible. And that's something that you don't see Kevin with. No kids. Like, really think about this. You don't see Corey Feldman with any kids. You don't see Scott Peterson with kids because he killed them, right? Let's not be morbid about it, but it's the truth. It's like this sacrificial thing. So I follow this, and I follow it almost obsessively. Well, definitely beyond obsessively. When I look at Zachary King, I look at the Ninth Circle with Kevin A, and I start to understand the tapestry of this, and it's just mind-boggling. And people like Kevin no longer take a back seat. They are front and center, because it's kind of like, if you ever flew to an area like a resort, you're getting picked up, right? And the person who picks you up is oftentimes, not always, the most underpaid person, right? And either they're going to make that initial contact at the airport with airport shuttle or the limo or whoever picks you up. They're going to make that interaction gold, right? Or you're never going to want to come back there again. And that general, countenance that person impressed you with was so negative that it eclipses your entire trip, right? So when you look at somebody like that, Kevin is like a frontman to the ongoing information or disinformation campaign of, this is your average everyday man. In fact, this is the underground man by Dostoevsky, right? This is the degradation of man in society. What has he ever done? What has he ever achieved? What has he ever, even me, I'm not bragging, but like, I've been the best in my field at a time in my life. Not, you don't just retain that, but I strove to do that. I sacrificed everything to get that done. And although it was short-lived, it was worth the achievement. It had that sort of impact on me, So when I see that in other people, I can see it, right? I can see that somebody has at least been exposed at some time to that let's leave magic out of the picture, but that gradient of grace or union, where it always takes other people. It takes a team for you to get to those places, right? And there's people who back you, and they champion behind you, right? And because you're like this horse that's just carrying the world on your back, right? And when people try to impress that they've experienced that, especially Damien Eccles, when all he's ever done, the only reason he's even known It's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You'd never know who the guy was if he wasn't able to, after his father's death, buy the most expensive exotic steroids, Primbolin, which nobody could get at that time, and use it around and his brother's death. There's always a sacrifice that comes right around the time that he won that big Olympia back in the early 1970s. His brother had passed away that was about his age in a vehicle collision. Yeah, so there's always a sacrifice. And there's something kind of weird going on there. And for people who don't want to look at and say, oh, that's spirituality, or oh, that's, there's devil or God or Satan, or there's witchcraft, or there's, the Masons, however you want to see this, there's something extraordinary going on under the surface that you can't help but become swept up into it. And when someone is active and they are talking about something, such as myself, I had to check myself and go, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? I had to realize that from the base, I wasn't raised with principles, didn't even really know what they were. So years ago, I set out to figure out what principles are. That's my own personal thing. You don't see me trying to aggressively push an ideology on people, right? I do run, esoteric principles of light, and I have for 13 years now, and it gets a lot of traffic, but a lot of it are just stories, concepts, ideas, and then as close to a religion that I could come to, which is where I want there to be a pure world. And when I say purity, I'm not talking about some weird Elon Musk, Heil Hitler pure world, or some Peter Thiel weird, cyber technocratic religion, right? That is covertly working toward other means and purposes. I mean purity in its pure sense, right? And I think that what I realized is that a lot of people don't even know what purity is, and that they sort of think of it in this sort of as this aphorism, as if they're thinking about some sort of fantasy or fairy tale. So again, rounding this back around to Kevin, is that when I look at him, I can see right through him. And I felt like I could see through him all too well, right? I could see through him all too well to where I could have, that I could have kept up. I was getting a lot of, I'd probably be up over 1,000 subscribers on this channel. I'm sure of it, on that channel. And I was already like around 5,000 views on most of those videos. Is it obvious that I don't care about views? that the principles mean more to me? That I don't want to be like these people? That I'm paranoid about being like these people on any level? These people who I'm talking about, So I got my eye on Damien Echols right now. He's a terrible human being. Like, he's not just terrible, he's a murderer. And he not only is a murderer, he is not sorry at all. He's 51 years old. He's got the same gray hairs on his chin as I do, as Kevin does. And it's the time that you put in when you were getting those gray hairs. That's what matters. It's not just this appearance, You're not just a cardboard cutout, right? So Damien Echols needs to get brought down. In fact, I hope next month, I know there's the whole double jeopardy thing, and he's already been tried, but they actually let him out of prison early. And I'm glad they didn't do that for Scott Peterson. I mean, can you imagine? So Rise to Liberty, if you've watched that, because I do a lot of, I'm over there quite a bit when he is, I think everybody, including Operation GCD, is just sinking into their live schedule. And I think JJ over at Operation GCD is trying to do more paid. I added it up, and the guy's only making like $500 a month off of the huge effort of all the study that he does, all his expertise, and now he has back problems. And I don't think that's ironic. I've had back problems to where I couldn't even stand up, and it was around these pivotal times when I was being attacked, and I knew that I was under spiritual attack, And when I think about my kids, when I think about other people, and especially other people's kids, I think about, do they know the spiritual attacks that are going on around the world all the time. I didn't want to be that guy. I was, you know, like when you are on the right side, when you are on the correct side, and you start to see someone come apart, and your energy and my energy is seeing through this person, and it's just it's showing all the destruction is happening to him. That's what I was seeing with Kevin. I'm like, I'm gonna back up and let this happen in a naturalistic way, right? I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to. I'm not power hungry in any way. I think we can come into our own power, so to speak. But I think that's even a really that's a tough word to use, right? Um, just building yourself up and being yourself is hard enough these days, you know. So I may be going back into that now that this nut is cracked a little bit, and I'm going to have to approach it a lot differently. And I haven't known how to approach it because every time I see one of his videos, I kind of get pissed off and I go into a tirade where I'm like, I really fucking hate this guy. Like I can see through him. It's not a joke. There's nothing funny about it. And then I started to look, you know, it was deviating me from more responsible choices of really looking at people like Damien Echols, because honestly, if you haven't looked into it and you haven't looked into the case very deeply, it's extremely disturbing, the way that it was done. So they're using this vacuum extraction method that's a fairly new way to capture old DNA evidence, like the shoelaces in that case. And they are currently, right now, most likely next month, they're going to be coming out. Like right now, they're actually doing the tests. They're probably done with it. So they think the West Memphis 3, as they're called, think that this is going to exonerate them. I personally think it's going to backfire on them. I think when one is behind bars, and you could see like some of the, I'll go through and I'll do a unique program special that's based on Damien Echols and others, and this is where Kevin might come in, where I'm pointing out direct contradictions, where I'm showing them in a clip. How'd you like that? 5 seconds, making a statement and then turning around and saying the entire fucking antithetical juxtaposed position in the next video. Like, who are you, right? And I guess that's my I guess that's where I'm really drawn into this, is where I look at it and I go, because I've looked at myself and I've had to take a hard look at myself and go, who are you even, man? Like, how many yous are there? How can you even say your own name or expect to be addressed with any sort of respect when you're not the same person 10 minutes from now, away from other people? And that's when you really begin to do this hard work, and that's when things get hard on you. That's when you realize and you start to see people that you didn't respect for a long time. Sometimes there were people who I thought were just homeless vagrants, right? For years you'd pass by them. Sometimes I would think people were just mentally ill or on drugs. And not until I went through these issues on my own, within my family, people in my family, myself hitting hard times, not until I really saw that, what it was like being in the seat of that, could I really ever have any true compassion. And I have helped the homeless out and passed not only just food out, but been there actively working with homeless people and assisting them and seeing on the streets. And then Ben, even last year when I showed that, even with money in my pocket after I got an award, driving my Tesla down the street in Sacramento, able to, go stay wherever I wanted to. I got to this place where I'd been renting this Tesla out just to get into working, which I wanted to do. And suddenly I had all this stuff with me and I'm driving this Tesla, and suddenly I'm given a choice. And I was so burned out on trying to get hotels. Like, it sounds crazy, but with money in my pocket and everything that I needed. I just decided to stay outside. I'll be out frank with you. I decided that I'm just going to go back to where I was years before during a hard time. And I was just going to go outside and stay at the city hall. I did. And I did all weekend. It was a weird experience. And I actually captured it on video. And I was talking about it. I was like, do you realize I could go across the street and rent that hotel room right there? Maybe even go rent out a room or a place, right? And here I am about to, about to sleep outside. And I did. And it didn't bother me one bit. It was hard. The ground is hard. I know what it's like being out there. And for me, what it meant for me is it brought me back to a real place, a grounded place. And I know people from the street, so this is no disrespect, but it's like friends of mine that were black. It's like, you ain't nothing but an N-word, right? Like, they'll tell you that over and over again. And you realize the grounding effect of that, right? And I feel like Kevin needs, I did the videos that I probably took off also, where it was like check punch, right? Where it was like, you need somebody to come up in your face, some 270-pound black dude to come up in your face and say, Kevin, you ain't nothing but an N-word. You hear me, N-word? Right? And ground him right back down to this organic level, right? And so that's, I mean, in a nutshell, I feel like that type of organic process needs to occur with us at some times. And you could call it the dark night of the soul, right? No racial bias being intended, but maybe so, right? Because certain people that I've known of different races and cultures just are able to, they seem to be able to stay grounded more easily than others, And unfortunately, us white people, it's our time. It's been nice. We've all tried to divert that we have some white privilege, but this whole thing with Trump, I mean, there's going to be a reaction, right, by the world. There's a repulsion, right? So when you, like the markets and cycles, when you see these peaks and you see these troughs, every single time, when you look at the Bell's theorem, when you look at the parabola, the hyperbola, how mathematics occurs in naturally, right? In the world existence, the field, the universe, the cosmos, however you want to put it. For every up, there is a down. So I'm very concerned for everybody. And I think that focusing on too petty of thoughts is not going to help us at all. But I understand where people are, where they don't want to go so deep and dark, where they're looking at Scott Peterson and tracing over every little detail, right? Which I do put up a lot of information here. They don't want to look at Damien Eccles and think about the terrible atrocities that occurred there, or a lot of the other things that I try to post that makes it look like I have this total ideation toward really dark themes. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to ground people, almost like saying like, look inward, right? This is the real world. This is what's really happening. And you can't hide your head from it or, pretend that it doesn't exist anymore, and go get 50 lattes. Like, this is the real gritty world that you live in right now, that you're having to go through just like me. And there's no one who's so special that they're not going to get their hands dirty and they're not going to see the same type of atrocities happening face to face, right? So a lot of the things that have been happening in India for quite a while were, even in the East Coast, like I remember when I had family that moved over to the East Coast, and he goes, on the way to working at the Trump Tower, right, there was a dead body sitting there for almost a week that nobody got to. It was like sitting out there for 5 days. Now, I'm not saying it's been like that in New York all the time, every time, but I'm saying that when you have a huge number of people and there are violent areas, that thin blue line gets a lot thinner, right? But when you look around the world, that type of thing, seeing a dead body, walking over dead bodies, and I was watching that Ali Coca. He changed his channel name. He's got almost 3 million subscribers, and I don't know if he's trying intentionally not to get subscribers, but he gets like just a couple thousand views on all his because he changed his name to something like Man Muscle or something like that. Like I think he intentionally did it as a way to bite back, where he didn't want to be put in this sort of coddled position, because a few of his videos that he just recently came out with was doing exactly that, like going through India, going into the dark lower rungs in India and the black market and things like this. And it's interesting how people globally live and have had to live for quite a while. Elon Musk declaring war on the Somali people, right? Like this is a thing. This is happening, right? After the correlations with the emerald mining and the obvious abuse with African people. So it's like there's full on race wars going on there in the name of people like Trump, where a lot of white farmers are being killed off right now by black farmers and people that are indigenous to that area, where they're saying we're not going to have any more of this white devil anymore. So I think that people need to represent their community in a positive way, where they're not just talk and they're not just capitalistic fluff, but they're actually representing something on an intrinsic scale with their principles, right? But I'm gonna I know I'm bantering on. Hey, Ameris, how you doing? I'm sorry. Yeah, I get walking, and right now I'm pacing, and then I'm gonna get off in a minute because I'm gonna do a little circuit where I do stiff leg deadlifts. If anybody's working on that stuff, I can demonstrate things. I'm not gonna say that I'm like a top trainer or whatever, but I could show people proper form and what I'm doing, little circuits. Maybe you got a few dumbbells around your house and you just want to be positive and jump in. It's as much as that. It's not trying to be like some professional fitness channel. I retired that. That's how I started YouTube back in 2007, 2008, is I really was working in the industry, and I ended up erasing 350 videos because I was stalked. I had a person actually stalked me that was in the government. It was a guy, and I guess the guy fell in love with me or something at that time. It was really weird and sick, but then started texting me and then telling me, like very aggressively. And I was like, I'm taking all this shit off, and I'm getting rid of this cell phone. And I was like, don't ever fucking contact me again, man. And that really like put me in a place where I realized at that time, this is way back when, this is like 2011, where you weren't making big money and you were getting all these thousands of views, but you weren't making any money off of it. So a lot of what I did back in the fitness days, where I would actually show myself sleeping in the parking lot in my little Mercedes across the street from Equinox Fitness, and then going in and working. And I won a lawsuit that said I worked 17.1 hours per day. I had over 65 clients, right? So I was not only working on myself, working all the time, trying to keep some kids fed and so forth, but I had over 20 credentials and professional credentials and certifications. I was constantly working on my education. So I understand like burnout when you're really focused on something, but some of that made its way through. And then some really odd situations that I didn't ask for occurred that I will talk about here and there. But I don't like to exploit it because it was extremely troubling, things that happened in my life. And I also don't like to give credence to crackpots like Kevin, who just on a cursory scale talks about prescient activities and Lilydale and all this. Like, I really do find people like him very repulsive, And then all of a sudden, he's healed. Just like Damien Eccles, He's now a Zen Buddhist master who shows up in this gi. If you go on his channel, Damien Eccles. I'm not trying to give him business, but what other way are we supposed to uncover these people, right? Where he's wearing this gi, talking about martial arts, weapons, fighting with Tang Soo Do and Kung Fu and stuff like this. And by the way, I'm not like a martial arts expert. I've taken a little Kung Fu and Tang Soo Do, but I never really, I kind of started doing my own thing and I do my own martial arts training, but they were just like, kicking and punching and trying to do different body movements that were more like Systema based. But I'm not in any shape to do anything like that. And I just, I'm trying to do my best and be as grounded as I possibly can. So this is what I have my son doing as well, because he lives over in Carmel and he is schizoaffective. And every time I've had him out trying to exercise, it's not that he runs into problems every time, but the police become a real, because when people see bizarre behavior, which his behavior can be alarming to some people. So what we do is we'll talk to each other. He'll probably call me in a few minutes and we'll do pace training. And then when he's over here, sometimes I can get him to work out or go in the other room and work out on the TRX or do pull-ups or bar dips. Yeah, God bless you. Marie, Cindy, Augustine. Yeah, God bless you. I hope things are going well. So a lot of times when I've done videos like this, like I walked over 2,000 miles doing this. Like I documented it. I had my iPhone. The Samsung that I have, the S24 Ultra, doesn't record like the iPhone did. So at that time I had an iPhone and this phone. And the iPhone just all the way down to the step, right? And so I did over 2,000 miles just pacing. And I also walked outside. The reason that I like to do this is because when I'm on carnivore, I can go right in, I can grab food out of the refrigerator. Those are mostly all Angus hamburger patties. I've got a ton of eggs, and I can just keep myself, right? This is 60 eggs. There's 60 eggs. There's another 60 eggs, right? And then I really love sparkling water, and then cheese and butter, right? Not showing anything off, just showing the grit and the grime the way real life is, I mean, I lived in Avalon Towers in Mountain View, and it couldn't have been more superficial, and I felt so hollow and empty. My clients were my neighbors, and though they treated me really good, they were all part of this whole weird thing with the people who started Google, the people who started, no embellishments, the people who started PayPal and the people who were involved with Facebook. I was signed up for all that stuff. I was signed up on Facebook by one of the top executives that worked for Facebook that was my client at the time. That shit's really close to me. So I know I've lived there. I've worked around those people. Sunny Balwani was one of my clients with Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos, right? Where there was the biggest scam. I know what con artists look like. I've been face to face with con artists. I've talked to them. I've seen how good they are at drawing people in, and they're so, their charisma, That's why I show Sam Vaknin all the time, is that he points out the expert detail of how much charisma. And I know that women, I know I sound misogynistic half the time, but I'm talking about my own experience. And sometimes I have to realize that that's not all females. That's not all people. When I talk about certain types of people, there are people like Sam Vaknin, like Lee, right? Over on 1013. Miss all talking to you guys, but our subject matter was not on par with who we are as people, right? We're better than that, right? We're better people than that. And when you focus on, well, like Nietzsche, right, to paraphrase, like, be careful that when you fight monsters, you don't become one. And I think that Real Talk with JJ, I think that he started to see, I think he's extremely sensitive. I still go back and I watch some of his videos. I think he's a really cool person. I've had clients that were Canadians. There's a guy who is a homesteader now, but he was homeless that I post up on this channel that I've been watching for some time. And he's, way up north in Canada. And I feel bad for the Canadian people because they're making more money and the appearance, they're being set up right now where they're making more money at their jobs There's even talk about them making as much as like $30 an hour at the grocery store just working as a clerk, right? But it's a big setup, as you know, because the inflation is then met with a heavy deflation, and it's what has to happen for the system to counterbalance itself. So I see some really, I see that the dark aspects of the shadow government, if you want to call it, are going to be coming in on Canada at a specific pivotal time. I think it's going to happen this year, and I think Greenland isn't out of the talk. I think that Greenland is something that the Trump administration is very serious about, and I think they feel like they already have the Panama Canal and Mexico. Isn't that crazy? I've been reading Cormac McCarthy, Blood Meridian, and it really brings to light. I know that it's like really blown out, violence and blood and gore, but for me, it represents how hard the Mexicans had to fight for their territory. And I'm not saying one way or another, and I'm not saying that a lot of violence, including the CCP fighting age Chinese, don't come up over that border. But what I am saying is to see how many lives were lost during that Mexican-American War, and for in a millisecond for someone like Trump just to come and take that away, it's impacting. And that's the same impact that I feel when I talk about people like Damian Eccles, Scott Peterson, the kangaroo courts, the jurisprudence system isn't so prudent. And then I see people like Kevin, and I'm like, you are aware of this stuff, right? You're talking about this, and you hate people. He's so negative. He's such a terrible human being. He's so toxic, right? How could Bridget even look at him? How could Bridget support that? But then you look at it and you go, Sam Vaknin, he's got it right. These narcissists, they know how to play people. And there he was, and he shows it, and he's just schmoozy and saying, oh, I was asleep because of my cancer. That's what he says. I'm asleep in the other room because of my cancer. And then she has to run out while the truck's backing up. How the fuck did you know the truck was backing up, you dumbass? Right? Probably looking out the window, I'll let the bitch go do it. Like acting like he's some kind of pimp sitting in this house, right? Moving when the hell he wants to move. Doing whatever he wants. It's not even your money, right? So it was really nice to see him get hit. And I know he made less money because I saw those views tank. And if we would have kept at it, right? Yeah, you can starve people out, but then you're also implicit in in causing other people suffering. And that's the type of stuff that can also be taken into court of law. And that is not the motivation, but that is something to consider, right? Is that as us as a group, somebody came into the group, I looked it up. I did as you know, I do my part at looking into things. And I realized what I'm looking at is somebody who's in the legal system posing as a particular person who actually has an entire team where they are headhunting. And they're asking you all questions. And you all, because of the way I had that 1013 formatted, you all were saying things that were completely provocated, just like what I'm saying. You were being honest. You looked at this dastardly, dirty person, and you were being honest, and I didn't want that to come back and bite you, because I saw what was going on. Because the girlfriend that I had, let's just put it like this, back in 2007, 2008, when I was living at Avalon Towers, how do I say this without saying too much? Let's just say that her former boyfriend was the brother was working at YouTube before it was even sold to Google. And I remember the day when Brett Hurley was driving around in his Ferrari, red Ferrari that he bought. I remember the day that happened. I was down on University in Palo Alto. So like, let's just say that I was privy to and pretty much signed up for YouTube the same way that I was signed up. Like an executive that works for Facebook actually went, have you ever heard of Facebook? And I'm like, I don't even know how to do that stuff. And she goes behind and where the computers are at Equinox at that time and signs me up for Facebook. I never even signed up for Facebook on my own. And the same type of thing happened with YouTube, where somebody who used to screen for years, where they would send in the VHS tapes and all that, back before you could just download stuff. By the way, I have a couple downloads that I'm working on right here because I'm trying to do more outdoor stuff with the 360. So it's going to be like more outdoor captures. It's going to be like the drone. Like we got the hover drone right here that gets really good, right? I don't know if you saw that little video, and then this, right? Really trying to up the content and get out more. So this is kind of weird that I'm caught impromptu doing this. Like, as you know, like the way that I really approach YouTube is I don't try to go for a bunch of subscribers. In fact, what I do is I'm trying to archive things that I feel that I have to say that are so important with regards to principles, because not only had I had to recognize that with a lapse in myself and my own principles, and it has to be that way because it has to be that important and detrimental to you. But I saw 13 years ago the advent of AI and the fact that it was horrifying to think that AI would take humanity on the speculative articulation of how humanity lives day to day between one another. I mean, can you imagine an alien race coming down and just looking? We don't know they're watching, and I'm not saying that there are aliens or not. I've told you that I've actually seen things, and I have always thought, oh, that's a type of technology. But I did see these orbs and watched them for over in 1990 with this friend of mine who is a marine biologist, and we watched these things for 25 minutes. I watched them dilate into into like what looked like stars. Like you see these black orbs moving across the sky. We're both watching it, totally clear sky, kind of over Monterey Bay. I've even done videos where I've gone back to that place on Google Earth and showed where I was standing, what I was looking at. And then about 5 years ago, I saw one of those TR-3Bs about 25. It started 2 miles away from me. I was looking at it because there were these running lights on top, so I know that it was technology. But as it gained closer to me, it was coming right at me, which I was surprised about. At first, I look at it, I'm like, what is that? Are those like birds flying at like midnight? And I was camping in Northern California at the time in the Grass Valley area, right? And I get out, clear skies, this thing's coming toward me. It comes all the way to where it's about 25 feet away from me, making no noise. And I look at it and I can't even make it out. Like I really have to it almost looked like it was either a Vanta Black, or at that time, I felt like it was like cloaked or something, but it could very well have just been sort of Vanta Black. And the thing was moving so slow and deliberate, making zero noise and passing right in between telephone poles and wires and things like this. So I think the technology is to a certain place, but I'm not one that jumps on, right? I'm not one that jumps to aliens. I never have. Even way back in the day when I saw those orbs, that just wasn't something that even entered my mind, right? And I've been kind of looking for an origin here, but I think that there's always been, I won't even go toward like Hyperboreans, as they call them, like Nords. I don't even really, or Bigfoot, like I know there's a lot of evidence, but I think most things can be explained through technology, unfortunately, right? And you look at what we're able to do with AI and these extreme fakes, right? And Fatima down in South America, and how South Americans have been taken for a ride, right? It's really sad to see us doing that. You know, the CIA set these operations up from the first place, bolstered the drug cartels up. In fact, um, in Mexico back in 2008, 2009, I remember when this happened, the CIA admittedly talked about this, where they took, at that time, two or three drug cartels that were working and amalgamated them into one because it would have been easier for them to deal with it, is what they said, right? I think it was, what was it, El Chapo or something? It was like 100 of the competitors' family members' heads were placed on the doorsteps of the previous functioning members of the cartel, stitched up like soccer balls. Like, this was on Yahoo, right? So the shit's real, folks. Anyway, I'm gonna get rolling. I really appreciate that you guys followed me along. If there's any content that you'd like to see, I'm gonna try to still do some impromptu things here, but I'm also gonna be doing much more professional edited type stuff. I'm also, my uncle who passed away some months back, and I appreciate you all, showing your concern for that. It was really weird because I stayed down in Pasadena about 15 years ago with him. We never really had a relationship. And I found myself in the same neighborhoods as Jack Parsons, lived, walking down Orange Boulevard, walking past Pasadena City College. And I had some really weird experiences around that time, but directly after is when some really bizarre things happened. So I do think that there's something going on, for lack of a better, spiritually. But I do think that technology is involved with amplifying whatever that is also, right? I try to remain more rational, right? But I'm looking at this, having had experiences of my own, Yeah, we are better because, why are we better? Not because we're born better. We all come into the world the same way, Marisis, right? You know this. And, that whole, I still grieve for you when I think about all you've been through. So, amen, sister. Amen. Yeah. I know, man. Gosh, your loss is heavy. And so many of the people on 1013, your stories eclipse Kevin's by such a long shot as far as what you, and I know that that's why you're attracted to watching this. Like, this person's bullshitting me. This person is actually playing me like I'm stupid. This is why I love watching Rise to Liberty. Jacob, I'm not bragging about this, but he's a Christian right now, but and I think he's still kind of working with this, but he was a Satanist for 10 years, right? He's a pretty young guy still. And he said the other day on a live stream, he was like, the one thing that really gets to me is when people play me like I'm stupid. Like, you'll watch these grifters, right, go through this process and assume that they are intelligent. I don't think Kevin's got over 110 IQ at tops. Right? And I'm not saying that IQ is everything, because I think emotional intelligence is way more important. But when you have somebody dumb as a doorknob, or whatever the term is, right? Dumb as a doorknob, that has to use other people for the most mundane, basic needs, and has to go on antidepressants, living in, and all that while, when he was living off of, I can't remember his last, it was Bridget, and then before that it was, I don't even remember, to be honest with you. My brain's starting to purge it all, right? Which was what I was going for, right? Yeah, I don't remember the name of her, his prior girlfriend or whatnot, but do you realize that when he was staying in that single wide trailer, he was actually living off of her? She was doing all the work. Do you realize what an abusive misogynist, like, it's one thing to say things and to follow philosophy, and then you're going to open the door for an elderly lady because that's just the right thing to do. You may have just been reading Nietzsche and spouting on about things, but what you end up doing, right, with your body, with the calories, you open that door. Well, what people like Kevin does is he wants credit for everything, and he mooches and lives off women. He mooches and lives off women. Can you believe that? And he always has. Like, I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember her name. But there was that time he never showed that video, right? And then suddenly he shows this video where he's in the hospital playing the victim, and they're both there. They're both there. So he not only never went without a so-called sugar mama, and that's what it is. He has sugar mama. And so do you understand how pissed off I get when his content is so base, so stripped and bleached of meaning, such lies, such deceit, and still I don't know who the fuck is watching him, but it just infuriates me. And the same, I get the same or even more disdain, obviously, when I watch Damien Eccles. It's insane that people are following Damien Eccles, and nobody's talking about that. Like on Rise to Liberty, they talk about Damien Eccles, Ramsey, right? He's followed this whole thing, but no, they don't focus on the man now that he's actually out there in society teaching magic. Yeah, he teaches magic. He's got extensive videos. He has 88,000 followers. He has people that learn magic from him. And the only reason anyone knows his name is because he killed 3 kids. Like, really put this, like, right? So when I look at people like Kevin, I see that the only reason you know his name is because he was mooching off a woman the whole time, wiping his ass, intentionally went and got an elderly woman that he wanted to anchor to, a widow, right? And then has the gall to act like he's a financial success, has the gall to act like he just did things and maneuvered himself right. And it doesn't take much to move a person's channel, like one way or the other. Like one boost, one share, your channel's up 1,000 subscribers. One big critical hit where you're exposing somebody, right? Like, I know people aren't into it, but I feel like Liver King is the perfect example, right? Because he got away with this lie for the longest period of time. And everybody knew it. I mean, you could see his brow, you could see his nose growing. I, for one, understand PEDs, performance enhancement drugs, very well. Like, I've studied the hell out of these things. It was part of my craft. It was part of my trade. In fact, I'm a performance enhancement specialist through National Academy of Sports Medicine to this day. It's one of my credentials. Also a corrective exercise specialist. They're lifelong, right? Paid a decent amount of money and took proctored exams for these. In fact, I took 2 for the PES. And the PES is not about drugs. It's literally about performance enhancement training and sports psychology and so forth. But if they were to teach it in a real world practicum, the PEDs with, in other words, it teaches you about Olympic training, Olympic athletes type of thing, periodization, right? Mesocycles, macrocycles, microcycles, how to break down and create the tapestry and how to work with other people. Like I worked with doctors and physical therapists. Like it was a whole team of people. These wealthy people have nutritionists, and I've gone into $55 million mansions in Pebble Beach and thrown food away in from clients' refrigerators, right? $50 million mansions and all this stuff. I never liked to rub elbows. I was never into the whole celebrity thing. I'm just an N-word at the end of the day. I know people don't like to hear that and they're very sensitive to that, but that's the grassroots type of that's what we all need. We need to just be floored right back down to the essence of who we are, right? So I never forget that. And so when I'm around those fake people, which I have been, owning clubs and seeing all the fake people coming in and out, I don't care. I don't care about the money. I want people to walk away with something, and that's the type of trainer I was. And that's why I won so many awards when I was training, because that's what I brought. I brought the principles before I even knew what they were. There's something that draws us to principles, right? And we're drawn to each other and we affect each other and we need each other as a community, So maybe I'll try to acknowledge that aspect on this channel a little more, and we can get a little more gritty, and we can maybe try to make a difference. I know that a lot of people were excited about the prospect of, and now you see it. Now you see it's almost like 300, right? Which that guy Sonny Ball 1, he really liked at the time, right? But that movie 300, where Xerxes, right, bleeds, and he shows that he is actually human, right, and that he's not a god, and he can't even really believe it himself. And I always equate Trump with, not that he's great, but Alexander the Great was told, right, until he passed away at 32. I don't think he actually made it to 33. I think it was like right around his birthday or something. So there's speculation if he died around 32 or 33, but that he was told his whole life that he was half God. And I think that this type of thing goes right to people's heads. And I think Trump is one of those people where it just went right to his head. And I think he really does believe. By the way, if you haven't read Ingersoll Lockwood and that whole thing with the adventures with Baron von Trump, none of that stuff even sounds like Trump, you know, but it's a damn good story. And his other book is all about going under inner earth. And it's a lot like J.R.R. Tolkien. It's a lot like that. And he was actually set to do a whole new book series, right? Tolkien, you know, with Lord of the Rings, that was based on such dark occult themes that we're dealing with right now, that we're discussing a cult, a faction that was, when we go back and we look at the Ophites or the Dionysian cults, or, you know, the worship of Bacchus and all this stuff, we still live in that time, in that heretical time where people really do practice craft. And so I really want you to be very careful out there and be aware, and, you know, don't put your shadow blinders on, your blinkers. That's what horse race, you know, many professional horses that are raced are killed all the time. In fact, they say that there's 2,000 killed a year, but I've actually heard from people who work in that industry that 1,500 horses can be killed in a week. So, like, that's tied in with the Indian casinos, right? And the degradation of the Indian peoples and how their land was stolen. And I really do very much believe in that. I've looked at that American history, and that's one reason I really love Cormac McCarthy's work, where he takes a really gritty look at the inner workings of the way the history could really be portrayed and told, down to the blood and the grit, right? So, you know, if you want to see any book reviews, I can do that type of stuff too. But I think just talking about the practical aspect on this channel and focusing on principles, you know, I get so much traffic through EPL blog, and that, you know, sometimes I go off the rails and I'll put up a story or whatnot. But for the most part, you know, you can look on EPL and you can look at the principles that are active and some of the experiences that I've had, because spiritual warfare is very real. And too often times you're not going to meet people who actually survived through a direct spiritual battle, right? So I think that, though, if you really keep your principles in check, you never have to see that, right? And I think that that's what we hope for and wish for with our own children. But then we realize that it's something you can't hide from. You know, a kid will come home from school, one of your kids will come home from school, and some really strange, terrible thing will happen with either a teacher or a kid, and suddenly you're like drawn into this thing where you're going, my kid needs to know. Like my younger son, and with my older son, but with my younger son, this big, huge bully was picking on him.